Okay, well, we'll get a start. How's everybody doing? All good, I hope. Staying safe and secure at home. Okay. Well, what we try to do is hold down enough research in the college, how it ties into the university's plan, into the state plan, and then to give you an idea of what our process is here going forward. Okay. What we'll do here today is I put together a few slides on the PowerPoint to just lead the meeting at the start. I'd like to get through those, and if you'll use the chat function to put any questions and comments you have in there, when we're done with the PowerPoint presentation, we'll go ahead and start answering questions.
Say, John,
Yes.
Lee here. Your audio is breaking up. You might want to turn off your video.
Okay.
Even though that's a really nice background you have there.
Let's see, stop video. That better?
I did try to turn off the bell, but it won't shut off because the meeting was already established.
Okay. Well, can you guys hear me better? Am I breaking up now?
Not
You're good.
presently. So that sounds good, John.
Okay, good. Because I hooked into my computer here at work and I've had issues all day long. So anyhow, so back to the town hall. Karen, if you would kind of moderate the chat aspect, and we'll start answering questions from that when we get to that period, and we'll go from there. But let me share my screen with you with these few view graphs or PowerPoint slides that lets you know where we are in the college and in the context of both the state and the university. Oops, I got to go all the way back. And can you all see that okay?
No, not yet.
Okay. We will try share screen. And that.
It's starting. Mr. Hellman.
Okay.
There it is. You're good.
All right, good. So what I'd like to do is get through these quickly and use the chat function. Go ahead and put your questions in, and we'll try to answer them all if we have answers. So here we go. Oh. All right. So back in April, early April, the Office of the Senior Vice President for Research put together a university task force to address how we can ramp up research in the context of the COVID-19 restrictions, with a big thrust here being to protect the health, safety, and welfare of our entire research community, as well as those that they have at home. There were similar task forces created. Most notably are the ones that were discussed by Eric Barron last week, President Barron last week. One is return to work. One is return to campus. There's another one on health impacts. The task force on ramping up research, return to work, return to campus, and health impacts all kind of overlap. Things that we're doing in one task force impact others. And they've been able to inform us as to what to do at the unit level, the college level. The Ramp Up Research Task Force created a report, was shared with all the other task forces for suggestions and revisions, and will be released soon if it hasn't already, but I haven't seen it yet for general release. This inspired us to set up a research ramp-up task force in the college to be able to get each of our subunits, the departments and institutes, ready to go as we transition to a new research footing, okay? So let me remind you what the stages of research ramp-up are all about, because they differ from the state, all right? The state has a red, yellow, and green structure. At the university, we inserted an orange phase as well, all right? The red phase is what we've been in since mid-March, where it's essential employees only for ensuring the safety and security of our research enterprise, all right? maintaining equipment, maintaining facilities and so on, so that we can start back up when it comes time. The orange phase is a transition phase where we bring back approved employees who are here because they have a very unique skill set that is required to get the facilities up and going, ready for return of researchers. So these are things like verifying that our buildings are safe, our laboratories are safe, we have personal protection equipment, and the infrastructure necessary to operate a research operation, as well as returning to the building for other purposes, is ready to go. That's a small estimated occupancy. That is basically your essential employees plus a few more from the red phase that get us up and going for the general return. The yellow phase is a metered return of researchers. And by metered return, what I mean here is that the intention is to get everybody back into the laboratory. The issue is that we have to pay attention to occupancy limits so that we can do social distancing. So the initial stages of the return might be something along the lines of using a team and a shift structure, so that in the initial stage of yellow, we call yellow 1, something on the order of 50% occupancy of the building at any given time, and yellow 2, 75%, and then subsequently when we go to green, full occupancy. Now, there are all kinds of ways to achieve that. We'll talk about that a little bit more as I go through these. Right now, we're in the ramp up to orange phase. Last week, we were in the red phase. What happened last week is that the Vice President for Research Office, HR, and the Provost sent each of the unit heads, the deans, institute directors, and chancellors at the university a questionnaire to ask, are they ready to go to orange phase? Okay. Again, orange phase is prep your buildings, prep your facilities, get them ready to fire up into research. Okay. Basically, ramping up into the orange phase has been planned largely by our task force within the college, which is comprised of our unit safety and facilities coordinators or their designees. All right. They've met now 6 times. They've really pulled together some beautiful plans, largely inspired by an outstanding job that was done by Material Science and Engineering and also the Millennium Science Complex folks. They have a plan that is ready to go for all of our units. We can implement that plan pretty quickly. And what that would enable us to do then is to request a transition to a yellow phase quickly. All right. Now, there's an additional thing that was not necessarily the case general knowledge wise last week. And that is that the Office of Physical Plant also has to play a role in both the orange and yellow phases in order to allow us to ramp up safely, because they're in charge of our buildings, our maintenance, our janitorial services, and so on, all of which contribute to the safety of our enterprise. So next one. This is a big list here. These are the kind of things that we need to get done in orange. You don't need to read the whole thing here. This PowerPoint will be available to you. But the bottom line is that your research ramp up task force at the college level has taken care of virtually all of this. All right, or will be prepared to finish it up within the next 3 to 5 business days. The issue is we're still engaging OPP. We have to coordinate with them and janitorial services and so on to ensure we can go from orange to yellow. But because we were at this state last week, where we're pretty far along, not only in our planning, but implementation for orange, Dean Kump agreed to go ahead and make a request to the university that we transition quickly to yellow. In other words, instead of just saying we're ready for orange, we told them we've pretty much completed orange. We're ready to go into the yellow phase. May we have permission? The good news is at about 1:45 today, we received notification that our college is one of the ones that's going to be permitted to go to yellow when they're ready. Okay, that's fantastic news because even just a week ago, basically the way we were all thinking was that, maybe we'll be in orange by the end of May. Maybe orange will transition to yellow sometime late in June. Well, we're transitioning to yellow very, very quickly here. That's great. So I'm very, very happy that we got that permission. But there are some issues that we have to address before we can go into yellow. All right. We have to finish all of the orange implementation. All right. Again, probably in the next 3 to 5 business days. We also have to have the Office of Physical Plants concurrence that our building is ready. And that's everything from the heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems to the janitorial services, safety and security with police services and all those things. So we've been working actually with OPP very closely for the last 4 weeks. We believe we're among those at the front of the pack to be able to get some of our buildings online. And when we get the permission to put them online, we can transition immediately into yellow. All right. Now, going into yellow has a couple of things involved with it. One is we'll still be on a directive to maintain working from home practices for everything except the critical research tasks for at least the very near future. All right. The reason for that is that we want to learn as we're going to make sure that we're safe and we can gear up to normal operations under a green state sooner rather than later. Part of this is also to ensure that everyone has enough personal protection equipment and sanitation supplies. There has been an enormous backlog on orders and so on. The supply chain just couldn't handle the initial surge. It's getting better. We just today supplied about 2,500 masks and gloves and hand sanitizer to the units to get them up and going if they didn't already have them. Another thing that we're going to need, because not only is it in our plan, it's required by through the thinking and so on of the university level task force, and that is a training program whereby all faculty, students, and staff will learn how to properly use PPE, what the sanitation protocols are, what a safe ingress and egress behavior to our buildings would be, how we report personal health and COVID-related illnesses, and the like. These things are all either already evolved in some departments like MATC or very, very close to completion in the other departments and institutes. Our step going into yellow will be that what we'll need to do is recognize that we can't put everybody in the building all at the same time. So we're going to need to assign faculty, research associates, staffs, etc., to some form of team or shift system, what works the best for your organization so that we can limit the occupancy density. We want to provide maximum flexibility there. Not everybody's needs are the same. Not all of them are as acute. Things change, and we want to be able to be flexible there, even if we had to barter our shift allocations and so on. The other aspect that we've thought about is we really want to avoid people working in laboratories alone. That's partially driven by the occupancy requirements. So many square feet per researcher in a small lab might mean that you can only have one person in a lab. So we're encouraging everybody to have an e-buddy system in place for solitary work. We're also going to be using a check-in and check-out process that's quite simple, and all of your facilities coordinators are aware of this, and they'll break that out in your own particular groups. But it's basically something you do from your cell phone or as soon as you sit down at your computer in your lab, that you're there, and when you leave, you check out. This is important because we're probably going to be in a situation where if there is another exposure or an outbreak, we might be asked to provide tracking information of who was in the building at the time that person was there. So that's something that's very, very important. We've also been asked by HR, and everybody concurs, that we need to have a confidential hotline for reporting issues that people see but are not necessarily comfortable bringing to their immediate superior, insofar as deviating from required protocols, safety-wise, and so on. We'll be taking care of that at the college level. And then, again, each one of these phases, we're going to be learning our way through. So we'll be swapping information in biweekly town halls to learn about what did we figure out works best, what's not working, how can we change, and maybe the restrictions are not as don't need to be as severe or the like as we transition to yellow warning. So we'll be setting those babies up. Stay tuned on that. I haven't thought that one through completely yet, but we'll figure that out. Excuse me. The other aspect that is absolutely required is that we need to have a rapid research ramp down plan, which I'm referring to as a scram plan from the nuclear industry when you scram a reactor. The point here is, if we have another COVID outbreak, we need to be able to get back to condition red in a way that's probably better controlled than what we did originally. What we did originally was magnificent in terms of its effectiveness, but there were some things that were left to be desired, and we need to fix those. The bottom line on all of this is that we need everybody on the same bus. All of the faculty, staff, students, unit leadership, and the like need to embrace the new research protocols and to serve as monitors and mentors to help people understand it better, perform better, because at the end of the day, it's everybody's safety, not only in our laboratories, but in our own homes and wherever we live, in the event that someone were to be exposed and carry it home. These are really, really important considerations. I'm almost done here with the presentation. Let me tell you what's going to go on with ramping up to green. Green could happen August. If we do orange and yellow very, very well, it wouldn't surprise me if we've learned enough that we can be a green state, which is basically a return to normal operations, buffered a little bit by whatever we find is the new normal, a term that's becoming overused, but fact of the matter is our lives have changed, and how we're going to do research probably has changed a bit. So green protocols might have things like some guidelines on social distancing, use of PPE, continued meetings through town halls, faculty meetings, and the like to maintain an awareness of the threats, and then sustaining the scram plan that I referred to, which we will need to implement quickly in the event of another outbreak. All right. So where are we right now? We know that the vice president for research, senior vice president for research, polled us last week to ask us if we were ready for orange. We said, yeah. And not only are we ready, we're ready to be done with orange in just a few short days. So we advocated for an early transition to yellow. And when I put this presentation together early this morning, we hadn't heard back yet. We heard 1:45. We have the authorization to go yellow when our buildings and our safety plans and the like are all ready for yellow. And that's what we're working on right now. The additional glitch was OPP needs to be involved with certifying that we're ready. And that's from the perspective of a building. All right. And when we have that, we can start. Okay. So we need everybody pulling in the same direction on this to help us implement the plans we're putting together. Now, those plans are being led by your safety and facilities coordinators in each of your units. So they really, really need your backing, so they have enough gravitas and horsepower to be able to pull this off in the quickest way we can while maintaining our safety standards. have one or two more view graphs, and then we'll go into questions. Get to them here. What do we need from you? Well, today we officially transitioned from red to orange, and then that was early this morning. And then we were approved to go to yellow, which is a great.
We lost you, Dr. Homan.
Uh-oh.
Okay, you're back. You're back.
I'm back. Okay. Okay, hold on. All right. But what we're going to need your help here. There's some things that persist in yellow as well as in orange. One is that the work remotely directive remains in place except for critical laboratory work. All right. That's going to go, I suspect. Okay. We also need to work with OPP. And Frank is coordinating that with each of the facilities coordinators in the units, the subunits. And so we're keeping the momentum going there. One of the things that we need from the department heads and institute directors in consultation with their faculty is for them to have a conversation as to who among their students and their faculty might be prioritization as to who gets in first and for how long. All right. The rationale behind that is there are different criteria that you could exercise, like somebody whose fantastic project is coming to a close in a month and a half, and they're way behind the 8 ball on getting their data to meet their work statement. Or maybe a young faculty member who's brand new on board and needs to get up and going, needs to get in the laboratory. You see the point. But that's a conversation that we're encouraging the faculty, department heads, and institute directors to have so that they can figure out their shift and team system if they choose to go that kind of route. And then it's really, really important that everybody work with their safety and facilities coordinators so that we can get not only this team and shift structure going, but we can get all the other things like ingress and egress behaviors and sanitization and PPE supplies and so on, all sorted out so we can sustain research under yellow conditions. All right. So they're going to need a lot of help from you guys. They've got an enormous job to do. They've done a fantastic job so far. And I think that's one of the reasons why we can go to yellow versus other units who maybe aren't there yet. Okay. Okay, one more. Well, okay, we can go into questions portion right now. If there's any questions that come up regarding research travel, I have one or two more view graphs that I can show you in terms of how to go about requesting exceptions. But let's hear about research ramp up questions now first. Karen, if you could read some off.
I don't have anything yet, Dr. Homan.
Oh, okay. Well, let people chime in. Take a look at the chat thing. Anything coming up? I'm trying to get back into my screen and computer's acting weird.
I don't see any questions yet, Dr. Homan.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Could you please let us know about research travel?
Sure. Okay, here's the gist. I'll bring this one up. All right. So a month and a half or so ago, the provost declared that all Penn State business-related travel was restricted until June 30th. There were limited exceptions, all right? And you had to request permission from the provost to travel. You needed to make a case that the travel was essential to your research enterprise or your scholarship. The provost would consider these and then give a response before you were allowed to travel. All right. The provost created a mechanism where it's going through an assistant vice president, Abby Deal. We've had several requests that we've prosecuted pretty successfully, right? And the process is route your travel request through your department head to me, and then I'll process them through Abby Deal. And typically they've responded in days. All right. So they've been very, very good about it. Some things that are helpful to have in your request is what your project was or is that's affected. All right. Who you're requesting to travel. All right. Why is it mandatory? Is the travel going to be in your own car or university conveyance? You're not allowed to travel until the approval is confirmed. I suppose you could travel, but if you expect to be reimbursed, you have to have that approval beforehand before you make your travel. There are some social distancing standards that they want us to adhere to. For example, only one person per car, and that all personal protection equipment protocols are mandatory. There are a few other things that help make a successful proposal. One is, and I firmly believe that this is allows us to bat 1,000% so far on this, is that screening your own personal health for 2 weeks prior to your travel and keeping track of that so that you can demonstrate that you were COVID free or asymptomatic, however you want to refer to that, prior to your travel, makes for a more compelling proposal. And then being willing to watch your health situation after you're done traveling is also a real plus. Now, these things were all drawn up back in the days when the entire state of Pennsylvania was red. Not all of Pennsylvania is red any longer. Some of it's actually going to go to green in a week. But there are still counties that are red. And so you need to take that into consideration where you're traveling, maybe if you're traveling through a red zone or what have you. So that answer the question?
Yes, I have another question for you. When will a decision be made regarding allowing undergraduate students into the labs for senior thesis and capstone design?
Well, excuse me, I need to take a drink of water. Hold on. We've been given no deadline. The decision to go back to residential instruction won't be announced until June 15th. We are under the guidance that no undergraduates are permitted in the laboratory. We need to ask permission to hire anybody on wage payroll, and the likelihood that they'd be allowed in the laboratories is slim to none. So I don't have an answer for when are we going to allow them back in, but I know it's on the radar screen because of the requirements of some degrees to have students do capstone projects. So we're just going to have to watch and listen.
Okay, another question. Any chance some of us could go in and get office desks or chairs for work from home?
Well, even under the red, we permitted people to come back to get books, papers, supplies, etc. Now, when you're talking about desks and chairs and so on, that's university property. So we would have to go through the proper process there to, there's paperwork to fill out to let people know, where the property went and so on. To what magnitude are we talking about here?
It doesn't go that far.
Okay.
I think they need to work with their area to see what they are and are not allowed to take out.
Yeah, that'd probably be the best guidance there. I personally think we're going to be into yellow fast, and we're going to get through yellow 1 into yellow 2 pretty quickly as well if we do all these things that I outlined here. So green's not far off.
Okay, the next question, are the principal investigators responsible for purchasing PPE?
Good question. So we had some guidance that came out of office sponsored programs earlier today that was distributed by one of the departments that basically was interpreted as you can't buy any PPE on research funds. That is not true. All right. We've been buying PPE off research funds for years in situations where it was necessary to either protect the individual from danger of reagents or reaction products, or to protect the experiment from the individual. So those are all legitimate research expenditures. The unfortunate thing here is that the wording in the directive was that any PPE that's related to COVID can't be purchased off research. Well, that's also something that I'm currently contesting all the way through OSP. Number one, because we have COVID research going on. All right. So that is just a black and white decision that needs to have some discussion. Secondly, COVID is basically a new threat in our laboratories. And I'm going to advocate for we need to protect our people in the labs, both from whatever's going on in the labs, plus what they're doing in the lab from them. I'm going to advocate for PPE is an allowable research expenditure and see how far it goes.
Okay, the next question is, will the whole college transition from orange to yellow together, or will it be on a building by building basis?
Well, the answer is kind of a yes. All right. And here's why I say that. Some buildings are clearly more ready to go than others. They're all within days of each other. All right. However, we're not going to hold up one building from going to yellow until all of the buildings are ready to go. Two reasons why. Number one, OPP has to be engaged in this. They only have so much staff. They're bringing their people back right now. And we're getting the buildings into the fray for them to come and inspect. They can only do one at a time. All right. So, as our buildings become authorized to go back, we'll be bringing them on board. It behooves us all to go ahead and get all of our plans that we did for Orange in place and all the things operational, fully implemented in this yellow phase so that I can advocate through OPP and 2 Central. We're ready. We want to start research and building A, B, and C.
Okay, there's a lot of talk about labs, but I'm wondering if we're treating offices the same, where it's just one faculty member in their office.
All right, so here's where the overlap with the other task forces comes in. With regard to occupying offices, whether it be faculty, staff, or students, this is a return to work task force issue partially, all right? So the guidance that we're trying to decide on in terms of occupancy of any particular facility, be it an office or a lab, is going to be based on some square footage per person that has to be adhered to. Right now, that number's bouncing around. All right. If you follow the Center for Disease Control's guidance, it's on the order of a 6-foot radius. That's 113 square feet. If you look at some things from MIT, it was 20 square feet. And that's taking into account plumes as people walk and so on. We're going to fall somewheres in towards the closer to 100, but not the MIT 20 square foot or 20-foot radius. And my guess is, it's not been fully decided on yet. We were holding out for 400 square feet per person. I think it's going to be more in the 200, 300 range, and we'll know in the next few days. So what does that mean? Typical faculty office is 150 square feet. If you're the only person in that office, you can maintain social distancing. All right. But if it's co-occupied, you can't. All right. So we're going to have to take that into consideration. This is part of the reason why the work from home directive is still in place. All right. That they're encouraging people to consider doing more working from home, at least until we get the whole situation sorted out and maybe get a little bit more herd immunity and so on going on. Now, in terms of staff, similar sorts of things. A lot of times our staff are in a little bit bigger offices, but there are more people in there. So we may have to go to a combination of work from home plus shift related things so that we limit the occupational the occupancy density to the point where we can do the proper social distancing. I can also tell you that the discussions that I've been engaged in through the university level research task force is that there is no traction that I can sense of having graduate students return to their offices for the near future. And the reason for that is their office space is 50 square feet. That's what the university's allowance is per graduate student. There's no way we can achieve social distancing in that regard without some kind of hybrid plan. And that hybrid plan will come out of what we learn in Orange and Yellow 1. So, maybe that situation's different about July, but for now, that's what we have. So I hope that answered the question. It's definitely on the radar screen. There'll be more guidance coming. The best guidance is continue working from home, except for research critical, laboratory critical tasks, at least for the near term here. Okay.
Okay, it says, do you know when the work hour limit will be changed? Can we work after hours in the yellow phase?
Well, one of the arguments for having a shift structure means that working after hours is part of it. All right. You might have shifts, say, of 4 to 6 hours long, several shifts per day, which clearly take you into the evenings. Part of that's going to be up to each individual subunit to decide how they want to do it. I'm aware of one unit that has, I believe, 3 shifts per day and a moratorium on anybody being in their facilities on Sundays. Creativity is the key here to be able to achieve your social distancing and occupancy limits in that regard. I will also say this kind of ties into the return to campus task force, where I've heard some discussion, for example, that if we do return to residential instruction in the fall, we might have a 6-day instructional week again, like we did back in the 70s and earlier. Classes Monday through Saturday. Those sort of protocols and research, I mean, we've been doing that for years. However, we need to get the people back in the lab, to give them the time that they need to get their research done. A lot of that is flexible at the subunit level. Work with your facilities and safety czars and czarinas.
Okay, undergrad wage employees, any news on when one or more will be allowed to return for part-time work?
Nope. I mean, the basic directive we have is no undergraduates in the lab and that the wage employees require dean approval.
Okay.
It just is what it is. And, it'll evolve, but that is not real high on the radar screen right now. It may rise up later.
The next question is, are the Institutes of Energy and Environment also approved to enter the orange-yellow phase?
I don't know. I have, I'm not privy to what the Senior Vice President for Research decision was on the other units. We were only informed for ourselves.
Will the transition to yellow phase change the process of requesting travel fieldwork permission, or till June 30th, the process remains the same?
Process remains the same till June 30th, or I get told otherwise. But right now, I haven't been told.
Okay, here's another one. Is it possible to talk to Penn State Transportation Service in order to facilitate the use of parking such as Red A or Nittany parking deck for postdocs in yellow phase?
At the unit level, which is the college level, we don't get to make those decisions. I don't know what the availability of parking is going to be in this post-COVID world, as more and more people do remote work from home. Maybe the whole parking situation changes, but my general sense is that parking as we knew it 2.5 months ago is going to be the parking that we see for the near future. So I don't see a change in that regard to bring another group or into eligibility for Red A. It's just not our purview.
Okay, it looks like I have one last question. Once we are in yellow phase, would we need to notify anyone or log our entering the building if we wanted to collect books, papers, etc. from offices, even if it's just for a brief period of time?
Yes. And that's going to be, how you do it is going to be up to your particular subunit. But this software that I mentioned earlier in the presentation is very, very simple to implement on both your cell phone or your laptop or what have you. And the whole idea is to be able to have the resources in the event that there is an exposure so that we can trace who might have been exposed. So any visits to a building are going to require a login, or should require a login, logout.
We have a couple more questions popping in now. Our lab has been conducting work deemed essential. In what phase can we begin conducting non-essential work?
Well, there's not a direct answer to that. And here's why. When we started this whole process of research ramp down back in March, what we were instructed to do was to identify essential employees with no definition of what essential was. All right. The definition of essential evolved over the next couple of weeks. So some labs made it onto the essential red list. All right. That under the current definition probably won't be the case. If we have to go back to another red, there'll be a lot more stringent exercise in terms of determining what's essential and what's not. All right. So being on the essential list right now is kind of it's sort of a privilege that no one's taken away because we have other things to worry about. Can they transition sooner to a non-essential work? No. The bottom line is the college, as we go building by building, to come back into yellow phase or go to yellow phase, will be treated in an equitable fashion. All right, and it will be up to the department heads and institute directors to decide what equitable means in their department. And then it's with the concurrence of the dean as to how it goes. Which, by the way, I should add here, Dean Kump is the conduit for everything on research ramp up to Central, all right, for our college. And that's the same with every other college as well. So anything that we do is with his concurrence, all right? So we have to do it that way so that everything stays manageable, okay, and equitable.
Okay, I have another question. Can you please clarify for the current part-time wage payroll who are not undergrads, whether they can do some work remotely?
Not sure what the question means. So we have people who are on wage payroll who are not undergraduates. Have they not already been working remotely?
I'm not able to answer that from here. I'll mark down who the question's from and we'll reach out to them directly.
That'll be good. If they were on wage payroll and approved to be beforehand, and they've been working remotely, and they have sufficient quantity of work to continue working remotely, they would return under yellow the same way as a research staff faculty member would have. Okay, same rules.
Okay, the next question, can we start ordering supplies and equipment for our research to be delivered on campus?
Absolutely. One of the directives several weeks ago was to be grazing your internet. You're finding where you needed to get, or where you could get PPE like masks and gloves and hand sanitizer and the like, sanitation supplies. Same thing applies to things like your reagents and so on that you're going to need to gear up. The rationale on this is that we know it takes several weeks sometimes to get these things. What we do need to sort out is what the delivery structure is going to be here, because we're only working the mail room right now 2 days a week. But we're going to have to gear up on that one too to start accepting delivery. So yeah, get your stuff ordered, get ready to go, so that when your building and unit is declared yellow 1, you're ready to do it.
Okay, safety training was mentioned earlier in the presentation. What role will that play in returning to research?
Well, first of all, we will at each unit have a required safety briefing. That, by required, mandatory. You do it or you're not authorized to return to the laboratory until you do. All right. That is also a bit unit specific. However, there are some there are a lot of common things that each unit can do a safety briefing on. The safety coordinators and facilities coordinators have been discussing this back and forth. They'll be coming up with some form of training and requirements, some of which will have standard operating procedures attached to them. And it'll be just like coming in at the start of your tenure as a graduate student, for example, needing to pass a safety exam before you have access to the laboratory. Okay? And so that will have some unit specific decisions. That's where you're going to want to work with your facilities and safety coordinators.
Someone asked if they will have access to this PowerPoint presentation. I'm assuming we'll put it on the website with the recording of this today.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. And then I'm not sure this question is to us. This might be to Dean Kump.
Mhm.
Are you planning to extend the startup packages due to the COVID-19?
Maybe Dean Kump had to go to another meeting. Oh, there we go.
No, sorry, John, Lee here. Just trying to find my unmute button. So, well, I think at the moment we haven't made any plans along these lines. But I would, if you are assistant professor with a startup package, I'd first discuss this with your department head, and then they can bring that consideration to me. We haven't extended, just across the board startup package deadlines for their utilization yet.
Okay, and then we have a question, the login log out app, is it ready now? And are people who are going in to collect mail supposed to be doing this as well?
It is ready now. Are the mail folks supposed to be doing it? Probably not a bad idea. We hadn't thought that far yet.
I would think if we're using it for tracking in case there would be a situation, we would want to know who's coming in and out of the building.
Yep. So I'm going to task our task force. We already had somebody on the task force who was going to deal with that. Who was that, Karen? I've forgotten.
I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll have to look back in my notes.
Well, we'll have an action item there and we'll get the word out to everybody then. Okay.
Okay, and then I don't know if this person was here for the beginning, but they're re-asking, will any PPE be provided to departments?
Well, this morning I provided 250 masks, 200 gloves, and 15 bottles of sanitizer to each of the units in the college, each of the departments and institutes. In one or two cases, it was fewer than that, but that's because they see fewer people. That's to give us a start through orange and into early yellow. And then after that, the intention was that general funds and research funds would buy the PPE that's required to operate your facility. All right. So again, in the issues or in the cases where PPE is required to do the research, that's a legitimate research expense. If there are some that might get turned down, then it becomes one of general funds. But I'm going to advocate for personal protection equipment being able to be purchased off research funds just in general, because we can't be in the labs without it. So,
Okay, one last question. Where can we access the login, logout app from? And I'm thinking that that's part of the individual plans for each area, Dr. Homan?
yeah. So the login, logout app is on what? Outlook, correct? Karen?
It is in conjunction with Outlook.
So there's an action item that we'll get back to you on. We'll give you all the directions as to how to do it. They're doing this, I believe, JP, John Paul Maria, and Matsy was the one who steered us to that because we were hunting around.
It's a Teams form, Dr. Homan.
Okay. So we'll get that to everybody. Action item out of this. Okay.
Okay, one more question. Are there a list of required trainings that they can start taking now?
Well, there are a bunch of really good trainings that are available on the Environmental Health and Safety website. They've done a really fantastic job during this COVID thing to pull a lot of things together in a curated form, usually all as links so that as things change, they're up to date on the website. So frankly, I'd start there. And as a matter of fact, here are some things that you could start digging into right off the bat. All right. Now, on the first one, I'll be working with Patty Craig to make sure that everything we talk about here and related to the COVID stuff is curated on our own website. That'll be link rich. All right. So that we don't have to put a lot of material up on the website, but rather links with some descriptive prose. The grad school also has a bunch of stuff, not so much in training from the perspective of safety, but with respect to administrative issues related to graduate school. The PSU site on virus info is updated daily. There's lots and lots of good information there, and ditto on the Office of the Senior Vice President for Research website. There are many others. If you start digging into this, you'll find a couple of hundred links that will steer you to everything from standard operating procedures and best practices to, so where do we think we're going from here? And even some links where the Association of American Universities and so on has some guidance and best practices to offer up to people. It's just link rich. You can spend hours and hours and hours.
That is all the questions, Dr. Hellman.
Okay. Well, I thank everybody for coming in and offering up questions. I hope we're getting the information to you, and be patient. Work with your facilities and safety coordinators. Respect the work from home directive. And we'll do everything we need to do to work with OPP to get your buildings opened up and allow you to get into the yellow one. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll talk to you when we need to. Just give us a holler.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care now.
Thanks, John.